Now, the NFL's exposure on the Stephen Ross allegation that he tried to tank the whole season, I keep waiting for the class action lawsuit to be filed against the NFL on behalf of everyone who bet legally in 2019 on the Dolphins, whether it's to win a game, to cover a spread, to make the playoffs, to win more than a certain number of games. There were about 6 states that had legalized wagering then, so it wouldn't be a huge class action. That's the NFL's civil exposure. But as it relates to who's in the biggest pot of hot water here, it's Ross. Because you don't go to jail if you did what you did and you're Amy Adams Strunk. Stephen Ross goes to jail for this potentially. 18 U.S.C. Section 224, bribery in sporting contests. Whoever carries into effect, attempts to carry into effect, or conspires with any other person to carry into effect any scheme in commerce to influence in any way by bribery any sporting contest, with knowledge that the purpose of such scheme is to influence by bribery that contest, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years. In English, if Stephen Ross did this, he could go to jail. Not that he will, but he could be prosecuted. And what happened earlier this week? Earlier this week, 6 attorneys general fired the ultimate shot across the bow at the NFL, saying, you people got a mess. And, you know, the way the New York Times phrased that letter, it was along the lines of an invitation to negotiate or show us you're making progress, and if you don't, we're going to investigate. When I read that letter, that's not in there. I don't know where the New York Times got that. That letter says, we're coming after you. We're going to investigate and we're going to prosecute because we're troubled by these things we're hearing about your business. So I guess when you consider the context where this is all happening with these 6 attorneys general now looking for anything they can to prosecute the NFL, I don't know, maybe they're equal. But definitely for Ross, it's worse because nobody in Tennessee is going to jail over this. Ross could.
Look, you know, you raised the issue of the league, and I just think this, Mike, you know, over the last year, let's say, there have been quite a few troubling things about the league, and in my opinion, showing that the league either has lost its moral compass or, you know, is just not doing what you're sort of raised to do as, you know, a morally right human being. And that is, you know, the Daniel Snyder investigation and going all the way to not issuing a report after you issued telephone book size reports on Ray Rice and Tom Brady. You issue no report on something that, to me, is significantly more serious, even though both of the prior two were serious. This is significantly more serious because it involves an owner, it involves multiple executives of a team, and it involves about 40 women who came forward to say, this place stinks. And there needs to be, you know, an airing out of this organization. And so what happens? The story's buried. And Daniel Snyder is fined the equivalent of 2% of his team's income for the year. And given the softest suspension that anybody could ever have, which is that, you know, your wife is going to be in charge and you can still obviously have conversations with her, but don't go to the office. I mean, it was terrible. It was terrible. And then we have the Deshaun Watson case. Does anybody not say, hey, look, this not only looks bad, but it is bad to not only have 4 teams falling all over themselves to try to trade for Deshaun Watson, but then the winner in the Derby gives the most generous contract in the 102-year history of the NFL. And not only the most generous contract, but guarantees every dime of it. And while Patrick Mahomes' contract is 19% guaranteed, Josh Allen's contract is 39% guaranteed. Deshaun Watson hasn't even played football for a year and a half. His contract is 100% guaranteed. And look, at some point, you've just got to acknowledge, this really stinks. And whether it's in a private session, whether it's just in having coffee with groups of owners, to me, it is incumbent on Roger Goodell to start to talk to the owners of this team like, hey guys, can we have a moral compass, please? Can we do the right things morally now rather than what we're doing? And so I don't know. The reason I wrote what I wrote about the Cleveland Browns and, wrote a very kind of a scathing column about the Browns doing what they did, in part was because of this permissive attitude by the league that as long as we're continuing to make tons of money, you guys go do whatever you want to do. We don't really care. As long as it's not against the law, okay, we're okay with it. Just do whatever. And people on the outside world, Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, the House Oversight Committee in Washington, they look at it and they say, what is wrong with you people? So I'm all for those airings, and I hope the attorneys general do follow up on this and try to, air this publicly.
Peter, what I'm going to say now is something the folks out there listening and watching will probably never hear on Good Morning Football. May never hear again on Peacock because who knows, maybe I won't be back. But you mentioned the possibility that the NFL has lost its moral compass within the last year. I think the more accurate statement is at some point before the last year, well before possibly the last year, the NFL strategically obliterated its moral compass with a sledgehammer, all in the name of maximizing revenue. That it's no longer about doing the right thing, it's about doing the thing that makes us the most money.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.